Boxing fans, we gotta talk. Gary Antuanne Russell and the new WBA champion of the world versus Jose El Rayo Valenzuela. Star-making performance. Brilliant. What really happened? Leave it to your boy Ego, man. Wow. Now, normally I give you guys the good, the bad, and the ugly from the fight perspective of what went on in this fight. For Gary Antuanne Russell, and I am not joking, I can only say good things. I can only sing his praises. So I'll start with the good. Sometimes y'all like when your boy Ego be starting with the good. So let's start with the good. Phenomenal stuff. Performance was amazing. For me, true character was shown from Gary Antuanne Russell. Reason being, he had a tough fight with Albert Puello, who just beat Sandor Martin, right? It was a loss. The judges scored it a loss. He lost. So the man was coming off of an L to Puello. Pushed him back a bit. Because before I think he had a 100% knockout ratio or a very high knockout ratio. And then you went the distance and you lost on the cards. So that was kind of a learning lesson and a stumbling stage of his career. So the question was really, how would he look in this fight? Now, you guys know the Boxing Ego reads are chef's kiss, impeccable. I told you that this was a good fight, virtually like a 60-40, 50-50 type of fight. And I got to say, I was wrong in seeing it. This didn't look like a 50-50 fight. It didn't look like a 60-40 fight. It looked like 99-1. It looked crazy. The man pitched a shutout against a very formidable Jose El Rayo Valenzuela. Now, on my channel, I keep it oh so real. I've been a fan of El Rayo. I like what he did in the Chris Colbert fights. I told you, El Rayo really won the first Chris Colbert fight. I don't know why they scored it like they did, but he won both of them. He set the record straight by knocking out Colbert, but that was that. You know, he moved on or whatever. Versus Pitbull. I thought that was going to be a good fight. El Rayo showed he can box and he can bang when needed to. He has power. So I was looking forward to that. Even the Edwin De Los Santos fight, that was just a fun fight. It was short, but it was fun, and it was a shootout, right? He hurt Edwin. Edwin hurt him, stopped him. It was just great. What Gary Antuanne Russell did was not like any of them fights, because even the Edwin De Los Santos fight, while it lasted, was competitive. Pitbull fight, you know, Rayo was more on the boxer side. The Colbert fight, all them fights was different. What Gary Antuanne Russell did was like, it was brilliant. Great stuff. You can't really ask for more. The man was coming off an L, as I mentioned. He had a game plan. He had a strategy. He listened to his corner. He employed the tactics that his brother and trainer, Gary Russell Jr., was saying to him in the corner. Now, speaking of Gary Russell Jr., student of the game, you could tell he really loves his brother, and he's a great trainer. There's a lot of former fighters, Freddie Roach, Robert Garcia, that are very good trainers as well. Former fighter turned trainer. Gary Russell, what I truly love from him, love, is his brother was out there really smoking El Rayo, and Gary kept him focused. Russell kept his brother focused so he would never get big-headed in the fight. You're coming off of a loss. There's a belt at stake. You want to become a champion. He kept the blinders on and the guardrails up so his brother could have tunnel vision, tunnel vision, tunnel vision. And I thought that was brilliant cornering because your brother has an aggressive style. He's like ruthless. He was landing shots like that. It's very easy for you to, get enamored with yourself or start feeling yourself and lose your way. And that's where mistakes get made and bad things can happen if you start tripping out and thinking you're invincible in the sport of boxing. So Gary Russell did not allow for his brother to get lost in the sauce and, go astray. Very straight and narrow, very stern. There were moments where, given how the fight was looking, he was way up, way up. Antuanne Russell was way up in the fight. And you still heard very strict orders from the corner. On the contrary, let's talk about the bad and the ugly. For me, the bad and the ugly was, why is it Antuanne Russell's corner are being more stern with their fighter who is dominating? He is absolutely dominating. And you hear cornering advice almost as if Antuanne Russell was losing. Like, man, stay focused. All right, no, you're doing too much. Cut the punches back, blah, blah, blah. He can't go match you in the card. And he was just real direct and real stern from Gary Russell. But then they went to Rayo's corner and they were making it like he was still in the fight. And this is his face. This was his face. He was getting like pummeled and beat up. He was looking deflated as the fight, like towards the second half of the fight. He was looking very deflated and like overwhelmed, which is rightfully so because of how Antuanne Russell was fighting. But you got to find a way to channel something if you want to retain your title. And this is what I said live in the watch party. So from Robert Garcia, who's normally a great trainer and has won Trainer of the Year, I didn't really hear the motivation to try to change the tempo. It was like almost like they had become reserved to the fact that Rayo just couldn't beat this guy or was losing the fight. I didn't really hear anything that would like turn it around. Stat wise, I mean, the man threw almost 1,000 punches. That's Antuanne Russell, 957 to be exact. He landed 175 power shots to El Rayo, who has power, only 78. You know what I mean? So the stats speak for itself. I don't always go off a CompuBox to judge a fight, but sometimes the CompuBox tells the tale, and for this fight, that's kind of how I felt. He was bullying Rayo, really, truly bullying him, right? And it was just a sensational performance by Antuanne Russell. Stayed to the game plan, stuck to it. He was battering Rayo. He acted like he was the champion and Rayo was the challenger. And I don't know. I don't know what kind of training he does. I know his father passed not too long ago. So maybe this fight was dedicated to him. Maybe the loss to Puello. Or maybe it's a combination of all these things. Whatever it was, for me, Antuanne Russell shined out of this whole card. He shined. He showed separation like Sandor Martin. Puello, that was a close fight. There was not really crazy separation shown. Even the main event, Gervonta Davis and Lamont Roach, was a close fight. Antuanne Russell on a card like that, being sandwiched in between those two fights, he shined because as a challenger coming off the loss, he definitely showed separation. He definitely showed that he was like reinvigorated from the loss, and the Russells had just overall a great game plan. They executed the game plan and it was working. I knew it was going to be a tough fight, and I didn't think, to be honest, I'm just being realistic like I always do on my channel. I didn't think it would be this one-sided. I thought there would at least be some competitive moments because I think Rayo showed he can box. He definitely has power. He looked in shape. He has a good frame. But this was really, truly, truly a blowout. It was a blowout. And at this level, you don't always get that. You don't always see a blowout in a fight like this with two young guys. But in the end, there could be only one, and that's the Russell brothers. They just, everything was clicking, all cylinders, great game planning, great strategy. Cornering advice was on point, mixing up the punches. That's what I like for a young fighter. I love to see that. Gary Antuanne is punching hard to the body, hard, but then he's throwing headshots too. So don't abandon the body attack, which a lot of young fighters do. Punch upstairs as well. So you get an opponent like Rayo, he just befuddled. He don't know what to protect. I'm you touching him everywhere. It's like, I don't know. It's just real surgical. Like Denzel with the shotty in Training Day. You know I'm surgical with this bit. Jake, I need my money. Jake. Surgical. Now you got what you came for. Surgery with the chainsaw. That's what I seen here. So big up to Gary Antuanne Russell and his brother. Amazing showing. I would imagine, I'm not PBC. I don't work for them. But I would imagine the Puello, since he won, and Gary Antuanne Russell, that seems like a sure shot path that you might explore. Just run the rematch. And he just fought with, he just like man on fire. Like Vin Diesel and the Man Apart. Like he was not leaving without the title. That's how he was like possessed. That's how he fought to me. So big look, big bounce back. And I study this sport. I respect and love this sport. But in the last several years, I cannot think of another fighter who took a L and then his very next fight fought a champion who was coming off a good performance like Rayo was versus Pitbull. And then the guy coming off a L did to the champion who was coming off a great performance what Gary Antuanne Russell did to Rayo. That's what makes it more marvelous. Let me know another fight in the last 5 to 7 years that fits that bill, where a guy lost, right? Had never been a champion, lost, then he fought a champion in his very next fight. No tune-ups, no nothing, off of the L. Very dangerous, because if you get 2 L's, you like Cool J. When I'm alone in my room, sometimes I stare at the wall, and in the back of my mind, I hear my conscience call, telling me I need that's as sweet as a dove, right? You don't want to get them 2 L's like Cool J, right? So that was a highly dangerous proposition. So you guys name another fighter who was coming off a L, never been a champion, immediately went into a title fight, and then looked like this, and it was one-sided beatdown to the point where I really think you should have stopped it to save Rayo. You put mileage, the corner put mileage on him. All that tough guy, like machismo and all that, like that's not good for the long-term health of your fighter. First of all, it's psychologically damaging, but physically too, because of this brute force style of a guy like Gary Antuanne Russell. He's throwing too many punches, and he was connecting a lot of them, definitely hard ones, strafing body shots that was like rocking Rayo's head back. You see the markings on his face. You know, I really feel like he lost his belt anyway. So he just took 12 rounds of punishment. There were moments where you probably should have just like retired him on the stool, threw in the towel, like, all right, you know, and then you would at least spared him an additional 4 or 5 rounds that he didn't really have to go through when the fight was getting away, especially if you're not going to have corner advice that motivates him and gets him out of the situation, which again, I told you earlier, I didn't really hear any dynamic cornering advice. And it makes me wonder if the chemistry, Rayo never looked like this with Jose Benavidez, David Benavidez's dad. So maybe that chemistry worked better, right? Maybe the game planning of Jose Benavidez would have had you fighting a different fight. I mean, I guess we'll never know because the relationship soured between El Rayo and Jose, and he moved on to another look, which is the Robert Garcia. But sometimes certain trainers will have you having a certain approach. Sometimes certain people can train you and have a way of getting through to you and, getting the message across, motivating you. So that's why you don't want to change your chemistry up with your trainers too much. But for the Russells, everything worked out. Brilliant stuff. Black excellence. They got the inswell with the mask. It was just, everything was clicking for them. Everything was clicking for them. And it was a brilliant performance. And it was a pleasure to watch, to be honest. Performance of the night. That's what really happened.